Hey everyone. Tonight we begin with a city that stopped breathing. Phnom Penh, April 1975. You've heard of dictators, purges, and revolutions. But the Khmer Rouge wasn't just a regime. It was a world unmade, rebuilt from ashes, and governed by a voice no one ever saw Angkar. This isn't just Cambodia's darkest hour. It's what happens when names are erased, when love is outlawed, and when even hunger becomes treason. If unraveling history's most haunting truths helps you rest, please like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what memory keeps you awake at night now? Draw the curtains tight and walk with me into a time where silence could save your life, but not your soul. You stand at the edge of April, 1975. The air is still and heavy with an unspoken dread. It's a moment that feels both eternal and fleeting, as if the very breath of time is holding itself. The city of Phnom Penh, once a bustling mosaic of life, begins to empty. You are among the many, herded by a silent, unseen force, urged to leave your homes, your livelihoods, your very histories behind. They tell you it's temporary, a mere 3-day absence, a brief disruption for a new beginning. But even as the words hang in the hot, humid air, a chill runs through you. You glance back at the familiar wooden shutters, the peeling paint of a doorway, the small clay pot still perched on a windowsill, details that once defined your world, now receding into an uncertain distance. The roads out of the city become rivers of humanity, flowing outward, away from everything known. The sun beats down with an unrelenting intensity, baking the asphalt, raising dust that coats your skin and your throat. You feel the grit between your toes, the slow burn of the sun on your neck. The sounds of the city, once a comforting symphony of motors, markets, and laughter, dissipate, replaced by the shuffling of thousands of bare or thinly shod feet. The occasional cry of a child, quickly hushed, and the almost imperceptible rustle of clothing. A profound stillness, a deep quiet descends, not the peace of a tranquil evening, but the heavy hush of a world holding its breath. As you walk, your gaze drifts over the buildings you pass. Hospitals, once sanctuaries of healing, now stand silent, their doors ajar, hinting at abrupt departures. Schools, where the hopeful chatter of children once filled the courtyards, are desolate blackboards erased, desks empty. Churches, their spires reaching for a sky that seems to offer no solace, stand abandoned, their bells stilled. You sense the eerie transformation of these places, no longer serving their original purpose, but instead becoming vessels for something new and terrifying. The power lines, once humming with the invisible current of life, go dark. The steady flow of water, once a given, ceases its whisper. Only silence remains. A vast, consuming silence, and the palpable, chilling sense that the individual, once vibrant and distinct, is being systematically erased. You are no longer you in the way you once understood it. You are simply a molecule in a vast, silent migration, moving towards an unknown fate. The world you knew is being unmade, not with explosions or grand declarations, but with the quiet, methodical annihilation of every familiar comfort, every personal connection, every whisper of self. The journey takes you further from the familiar, deeper into a landscape that begins to feel less like home and more like a stage for an unsettling transformation. Slowly, subtly. Then, with an accelerating force, the threads of your former identity are unraveled. You once had a name, a sound that resonated with your past, connected you to your parents, your friends, your memories. Now, that name, a melody of self, is taken from you. You become a number, a designation in a silent ledger, reducing you to an interchangeable unit. It is a strange, disorienting experience to hear a number called and realize it is you, or what is left of you. The echo of your true name fades, like a distant whisper carried on the wind. The concept of Ankar, the organization, begins to permeate every waking moment. It is an unseen entity, a voice without a face. Yet it becomes the new mother, the new father, the omnipresent force that dictates every facet of existence. You are told that Ankar knows best, that Ankar provides, that Ankar is the true guiding light. This invisible hand reaches into the most intimate corners of your life. Love, once a spontaneous, heartfelt connection between two souls, is now deemed a dangerous luxury, a potential distraction from the collective. It is forbidden a weakness that must be purged. You witness the painful separation of families, the quiet anguish as mothers are torn from children, husbands from wives, brothers from sisters. The bonds that once wove the fabric of society are systematically shredded. Even grief, the most profound and universal expression of human sorrow, is criminalized. To mourn is to show a weakness, to express an attachment that Ankar deems unnecessary. You learn to swallow your tears, to bury your sorrow deep within, where no one can see, where no one can report. The air becomes thick with unspoken grief, a silent lament that hangs heavy, yet must never be acknowledged. This suppression of natural human emotion breeds a chilling atmosphere of fear and suspicion. Everyone is forced to become a monitor, a silent watcher of their neighbors, their friends, even their own family members. A furtive glance, a quiet sob, a whispered word, any sign of deviation from Ankar's decree can be reported, can lead to disappearance. Paranoia, like an invisible net, slowly tightens around the community. You feel its threads, its prickling sensation on your skin, the constant awareness that eyes are watching, listening, judging. This deep-seated fear, this pervasive mistrust, becomes the new social glue, binding you not through affection or shared purpose, but through the chilling certainty that survival depends on absolute conformity and the constant vigilance against any hint of individuality. The journey culminates not in another city, but in the vast, open countryside. You are part of the massive relocation, a human tide washing over the land. The proclaimed goal is a new beginning, an ideal agrarian utopia, where all would be equal, working the earth in harmonious collective. But the reality that unfolds before your eyes and beneath your weary feet is starkly different. You are moved to communal farms, sprawling expanses of fields that stretch to the horizon, where the very earth seems to sigh under the weight of human endeavor. The regime demands an unprecedented increase in rice production, a tripling of yields, a fervent expectation that ignores the limitations of the land, the lack of proper tools, and the exhaustion of the human body. Your days begin before the sun has even painted the sky, a faint gray promising the coming heat. You are roused by the distant, rhythmic clang of a metal drum, a signal that pierces the quiet of dawn. From that moment, your existence is consumed by labor. 10 to 14 hours a day, sometimes even longer, you toil in the fields. The soil is hard, resistant, often cracked and dry from the sun. You use primitive tools, digging hoes, working with your bare hands, planting rice shoots until your fingers are numb and your back aches with a persistent, gnawing pain. The sun, a relentless eye in the sky, beats down, sapping your strength, turning your skin to leather. The air, thick with the scent of earth and sweat, becomes a suffocating blanket. You see children, no older than 11 or 12, their small bodies bent over the soil, their faces streaked with mud and exhaustion. The elderly, their frames fragile and weary, are not spared. They, too, are out in the fields, their movements slow and deliberate, their eyes holding a distant, resigned look. The slogan echoes in your mind, a chilling mantra repeated by the cadres, shouted during morning assemblies, painted on crude banners, "Sacrifice unto death for the revolution." It is not just a call to work, but a demand for absolute self-annihilation, a complete surrender of individual well-being for the abstract ideal of the revolution. You watch as a girl named Farath, her small frame already burdened by hunger, moves through the rows, her hands mechanically tending to the plants. Her eyes, though young, hold a wisdom far beyond her years, a knowledge of suffering that no child should ever possess. Her story, a quiet tragedy among millions, is etched in the dust of these fields. You feel the slow, methodical draining of your own energy, the transformation of your body into a mere instrument of labor, driven by the relentless will of Ankar, leaving nothing left for personal thought, for hope, for the simple joy of rest. In these fields, under the unblinking eye of the sun and the even more vigilant gaze of the cadres, life begins to unravel with a chilling quietude. Death, once a solemn, ritualized passage, becomes an almost mundane occurrence, stripped of all dignity. People die around you, not with dramatic flourishes, but subtly, slowly, succumbing to the relentless grind of exhaustion, the gnawing emptiness of hunger, the insidious spread of disease. You see a figure collapse in the field, a silent heap of exhaustion. And minutes later, they are gone. There is no time for lament, no space for grief. To cry, to openly mourn, is a dangerous act, a sign of attachment to the old ways, a challenge to the revolution's iron will. You learn to internalize the pain, to let tears form unseen behind your eyes, swallowed down like bitter medicine. Burials, if they happen at all, are hasty, undignified affairs. There are no ceremonies, no prayers, no lasting markers. Bodies are simply placed in shallow graves, often in unmarked pits, their resting places soon reclaimed by the earth. It is as if the very memory of these individuals, once vibrant and alive, is meant to be erased as quickly as their physical presence vanishes. The revolution demands absolute control, extending even to the most basic human needs and instincts. The simple act of preparing food for yourself, of nurturing a small, private garden, is deemed an act of rebellion, a selfish indulgence that takes away from the collective. To be caught with a hidden pot, a few precious roots you've managed to forage, is a grave violation, punishable by death. You remember Farah, the young girl whose small hands worked tirelessly in the fields? One day, her grandmother, a frail woman whose eyes held the wisdom of many seasons, was found with a hidden pot, containing perhaps a few boiled leaves and some traditional medicine, a desperate attempt to soothe her ailing body. The guards, their faces impassive, confiscated her meager possessions. Her grandmother died not long after, her quiet breath fading, a silent casualty of a system that outlawed even the most basic acts of care and survival. You feel the constant knot of fear in your stomach, the silent, agonizing calculation of risk and reward, the slow erosion of your own humanity as you witness these daily atrocities. The world has become a place where kindness is a weakness, and the simple desire to live on your own terms is a capital offense. The quiet deaths, the suppressed grief, the constant, gnawing hunger, these become the new rhythms of existence, a slow dance towards oblivion, where every breath feels like a borrowed moment. The quiet erosion of life soon gives way to an even more pervasive and deliberate form of suffering famine. Between 1976 and 1978, a shadow of starvation spreads across the land. Not a natural disaster, but a man-made horror. The regime, obsessed with its agrarian utopia, ruthlessly requisitions nearly all the rice and grain produced for export to fund its grand, ideological visions. The people who toiled in the fields, whose sweat and blood watered the rice paddies, are left with almost nothing. The meager rations you receive are barely enough to sustain a child, let alone an adult working 10 to 14 hours a day. You learn to scavenge, to eye the earth with desperate hunger, searching for anything that might offer a whisper of sustenance. You watch as others, gaunt and hollow-eyed, chew on tree roots, their fibrous texture offering little nourishment but a desperate attempt to fill the void. Banana peels, once discarded, become a coveted meal, their faint sweetness a fleeting luxury. Insects, scurrying across the ground, are quickly caught and consumed, a desperate source of protein in a landscape devoid of it. The constant ache in your stomach becomes a familiar companion, a dull, persistent throb that never truly goes away. You hear your own stomach growl, a rumble that feels shockingly loud in the pervasive silence. And yet, in the face of this widespread suffering, the Khmer Rouge officials maintain a chilling denial. Their voices, calm and authoritative, echo through communal gatherings. If you feel hungry, they say, their eyes devoid of empathy. It is only a disease of the imagination. This denial, this gaslighting of your most fundamental bodily experience, is almost as cruel as the hunger itself. It forces you to question your own reality, to doubt the gnawing emptiness, to believe that your very sensations are a betrayal of the revolution. You are told that true revolutionaries do not feel hunger, that it is a bourgeois indulgence, a sign of weakness. To admit hunger, even to yourself, becomes an act of defiance, a mental transgression. You see the silent desperation in the eyes around you, the way people's gazes linger on anything edible, the slow, visible shrinking of bodies. Yet the lie persists. The famine is not merely a consequence, it is a policy, a brutal instrument designed to break the human spirit, to purify the population through suffering, leaving only those resilient enough, or perhaps numb enough, to survive. Every meal is a phantom, every hunger pang a test of loyalty, every day a slow, deliberate march towards the brink. As hunger and exhaustion relentlessly chipped away at life, another critical pillar of society was systematically dismantled: healing. Doctors, nurses, and all those with knowledge, with the capacity to mend and to soothe, were deemed enemies of the revolution. You witness their quiet disappearance, the swift, often unseen, arrests of those who once offered comfort and cure. Their education, their skills, their compassion, all were considered dangerous, a threat to Angkar's absolute control. They were intellectuals, those who thought independently, who possessed knowledge outside the party's doctrine, and thus, they had to be purged. No medicine remains, no ointments to soothe a feverish brow, no pills to quell the burning pain of dysentery. The small worn bottle of traditional remedies, often passed down through generations, is all that might be left. If you are lucky enough to have it and brave enough to keep it hidden, the consequences are swift and devastating. Malaria, carried by mosquitoes that swarm in the humid air, spreads like wildfire. You see the shaking fevers, the clammy skin, the gradual weakening of those around you. Dysentery, a horrifying descent into dehydration and agony, claims countless lives, especially the frail and the young. Typhoid, a silent killer, leaves its victims withered and lifeless. There is no one to turn to, no one to offer even the smallest comfort or counsel. You become a helpless observer, watching as loved ones, friends, and strangers simply waste away, their bodies consumed by illness that, in another time, might have been easily treated. The fear extends beyond overt actions or professions. It permeates even the smallest, most personal aspects of your being. To wear glasses, a simple tool to correct vision, is a red flag and indicator of intellectualism, of a life spent reading and thinking. To know how to read, to possess the key to knowledge and independent thought, is a death sentence. To speak a foreign language, to possess a connection to the outside world, to histories and ideas beyond Angkar's narrow vision, marks you for immediate suspicion and often execution. You learn to hide your literacy, to pretend you cannot read the crude propaganda posters, to speak only the simplest, most common phrases in your native tongue. Your very intellect, your capacity for independent thought, becomes a burden, a secret you must fiercely guard to survive. The absence of healing, combined with the active persecution of knowledge, creates a world where disease thrives unchecked, and the human body, already weakened by hunger and labor, has no defense against the relentless march of sickness and death. Deep within the heart of the once vibrant city, a former high school, a place where youthful laughter and the murmur of learning once filled the halls, undergoes a chilling metamorphosis. It becomes Tuol's slang, known chillingly as S-21, a secret prison designed for torture and extermination. You do not see it with your own eyes, not directly, for its existence is shrouded in a veil of terrifying secrecy, its name spoken only in hushed whispers, if at all. But its shadow stretches long over the land, an unseen web of fear that touches every soul. Here, at least 18,000 prisoners, men, women, and even children are brought. Almost every single one will be executed. You can almost feel the cold dread that seeps from its walls, the silent screams that linger in the air. Within these transformed classrooms, interrogation rooms are created, where torture is a systematic tool, not for extracting truth, but for manufacturing confessions. You hear whispered accounts of what happens inside, fragments of stories that pierce the veneer of silence. Bones are broken, bodies are shocked with electricity, the agony stretched out, relentless, until the victims break, confessing to invented crimes, to fabricated connections. They are forced to admit to being CIA spies, KGB agents, or simply enemies of the revolution words scrawled onto papers under duress, then used to justify their ultimate demise. You think of Chum May, one of the vanishingly small handful of individuals who walked out of those gates alive. His memory, a profound and terrible testament, paints a vivid picture of the sheer brutality. You imagine the cold concrete, the sound of the chains, the methodical questioning, the searing pain that forced a man to betray his own truth, to utter lies in a desperate bid to end the torment. The prison's purpose is not justice, but erasure. It is a machine designed to destroy identity, to crush the spirit, to eliminate any potential dissent, however imagined. The victims, once individuals with lives and families, are reduced to numbers, their faces captured in stark, chilling photographs upon entry, their eyes holding a raw terror and resignation. The very concept of innocence is abolished here. Simply to be accused is to be condemned. S-21 stands as a silent monument to the depths of human cruelty, a place where reason and compassion are utterly abandoned, where the darkness of ideology consumes all light. The revolution, in its relentless pursuit of absolute control, did not spare the innocence of childhood. Instead, it twisted and corrupted it, turning the most vulnerable members of society into its most potent tools. Children, often just barely out of toddlerhood, are systematically indoctrinated, their young minds molded by the pervasive ideology of Angkar. You witness the eerie sight of children, their faces serious beyond their years, being taught to report on their own parents, their own siblings, on anyone who deviates from the party line. The bonds of family, already strained by forced separations and pervasive fear, are further shattered by this insidious practice. A child's innocent question, overheard by a watchful sibling, could lead to a parent's disappearance. Trust, the bedrock of childhood security, is replaced by suspicion and fear, even within the closest familial circles. Many of the Khmer Rouge fighters you encounter, the ones who enforce Angkar's will with cold efficiency, are themselves mere teenagers, drawn from the rural villages. They know little else but the harsh realities of war and the unquestioning obedience demanded by the regime. Their childhoods, if they had any at all, were cut brutally short, replaced by military training and ideological conditioning. They are young, often no older than 15 or 16, yet they wield rifles, their eyes holding a chilling emptiness. You see them, standing guard, their small bodies draped in oversized uniforms, their hands clutching weapons that seem too large for them. These young soldiers, detached from the warmth of human connection, become executioners without emotion. They are tools, sharpened and shaped by the relentless grind of ideology, their capacity for empathy systematically stripped away. They are taught that love is a weakness, that family is secondary to Angkar, that revolution demands absolute loyalty. They carry out brutal orders, their faces often impassive, their youth a stark contrast to the horrific acts they commit. You sense the profound tragedy of these shadowed childhoods, the loss of innocence, the transformation of malleable minds into instruments of destruction. It is a chilling reminder of how easily the human spirit can be warped, how the promise of a better world can be built on the utter devastation of individual lives, even the lives of those meant to inherit that world. Their laughter is gone, replaced by the chilling silence of absolute obedience. The borders of this shattered land, once open to the flow of travelers and trade, became a trap for the unwary. Foreigners, those who had wandered into Cambodia drawn by its ancient beauty or the quiet hum of everyday life, found themselves ensnared in the revolution's merciless grip. You hear the stories, whispered in the brief moments of perceived safety, of those who simply vanished. John Dawson, a British teacher, perhaps drawn by a sense of adventure or a desire to contribute, found himself arrested. He was tortured, accused of the same fabricated crimes as the local population, being CIA, an all-encompassing accusation that needed no evidence, only a foreign face. Many others, from various nations, who unwittingly strayed into the zones controlled by the Khmer Rouge, faced a horrifying choice: instant execution or a prolonged agony in the secret prisons. You can almost imagine their confusion, their desperate attempts to understand the language, the rules, the madness that had consumed this once gentle nation. They, too, were subjected to the same brutal interrogations as the Cambodian people. Stripped of their passports, their identities, they were forced to write confessions, bizarre concoctions of truth and fiction, designed to incriminate them and justify their impending doom. These confessions, often rambling and nonsensical, detailed invented spy missions, alleged connections to enemy states, elaborate plots that existed only in the minds of their tormentors. And then, after the coerced words were put to paper, after the last gasp of dignity was squeezed from their bodies, they were executed. Their presence, their very existence as outsiders, was a threat to Angkar's insular, paranoid vision of a purified society. They carried knowledge of the world beyond, memories of freedoms and concepts that the revolution sought to obliterate. Their stories, often lost or only slowly unearthed years later, serve as a stark reminder of the indiscriminate nature of the regime's brutality, extending beyond its own populace to anyone unlucky enough to fall into its web. You feel the chilling sense of isolation that must have enveloped these lost souls. Caught in a nightmare, thousands of miles from home, unable to speak, unable to understand, utterly alone as the darkness consumed them. Their quiet disappearances left behind only questions, and the lingering sense that no one was truly safe from the reach of Angkar. After the forced confessions, after the systematic breaking of body and spirit within the secret prisons, the prisoners are sent to the killing fields. These are not specific, marked locations, but rather widespread, desolate stretches of land, often former orchards or rice paddies, chosen for their isolation and their ability to absorb the horrors enacted upon them. Here, the final act of erasure unfolds. You imagine the eerie quiet of these places, broken only by the sounds of the wind and the muted thud of violence. The regime, in its perverse efficiency, sought to conserve precious bullets, reserving them for more important targets or for actual combat. So, the executions are carried out with brutal, rudimentary tools. You visualize the heavy swing of a hoe, the blunt force of a tree trunk, the insidious, silent poison that quickly ends a life. These methods are not only cost-effective, but also maximize terror, turning everyday objects into instruments of unimaginable cruelty. And the horror extends even to the most innocent. Babies. Infants who have known nothing but the brief warmth of their mother's embrace are not spared. They are cruelly smashed against trees, their small lives extinguished with a horrifying finality, a desperate attempt to sever any future ties, any potential for revenge or memory, any lingering lineage. It is a level of depravity that chills you to the bone, a deliberate act of total obliteration. Even today, decades later, the earth itself bears silent witness to these atrocities. During the monsoon rains, when the soil softens and the ground yields its secrets, bones still rise to the surface. You can almost see them, bleached white against the dark earth. Fragments of a forgotten past, a haunting reminder of the lives abruptly ended here. These are not merely bones. They are the physical echoes of almost 2 million lost souls, a staggering number that represents 1/4 of Cambodia's entire population. It is a void that can never truly be filled, a collective wound that continues to ache. The killing fields stand as a somber monument not just to the dead, but to the capacity for human evil, a place where the earth silently screams. A testament to what happens when an ideology turns its back on all humanity, leaving behind only the chilling quiet of mass graves. The reign of terror, seemingly endless in its oppressive grip, finally begins to show cracks, not from within, but from an external force. In 1979, the slow turning of the tide begins. Vietnam, a neighboring nation, launches an invasion, marching into Phnom Penh, the very city that had been emptied and silenced years earlier. You can almost feel the collective, hesitant breath of the survivors, a flicker of hope in the vast darkness. The Khmer Rouge regime, once seemingly invincible, begins to crumble under the sustained military pressure. Pol Pot, the architect of this living nightmare, along with his remaining forces, are forced to flee. They retreat to the jungles along the Thai border, a ghostly echo of their former power, continuing a guerrilla war for nearly 2 more decades. The brutal experiment in social engineering, the agrarian utopia built on mountains of bodies, is officially over. The liberation, however, is not a sudden burst of sunlight, but a slow, cautious dawn. The fear ingrained in the people runs deep, a phantom limb that aches long after the danger has seemingly passed. Yet, there is a profound, if quiet, sense of relief. The physical presence of Angkar's iron fist is gone from the capital, its immediate grip loosened. The long, arduous process of rebuilding, of simply surviving, begins. But the architects of the suffering continue to evade full accountability. Pol Pot, the man who oversaw the systematic murder of millions, lives out his life, albeit in hiding and on the run. His death finally comes in 1998, nearly 2 decades after his regime fell. In a final, chilling testament to the profound disconnect between ideology and human suffering, he dies unrepentant. His last public words, or at least those attributed to him, resonate with an almost unfathomable arrogance. "My conscience is clear." You ponder these words, a cold knot forming in your stomach. How can a conscience be clear after presiding over such widespread death? Such unspeakable suffering? It is a stark reminder that some minds, once consumed by an absolute ideology, become immune to the very concept of remorse, to the vast ocean of pain they have inflicted. The quiet turning of the tide brings an end to the immediate terror, but the shadow of Pol Pot's unrepentant spirit and the lingering question of accountability continues to hang over the land, a bitter reminder of the enduring scars of an unfathomable past. The immediate terror lifted. A country slowly, painstakingly, begins to breathe again. But the aftermath of Angkar's brutal reign is not a simple return to what was. It is a landscape forever altered, a nation reeling from an unimaginable wound. You look at the vacant stares, the haunted eyes of those who survived, and understand that recovery is not merely about rebuilding structures, but about mending souls that have been shattered. The country is left without doctors, their knowledge purged, their lives extinguished, leaving a gaping void in the face of widespread disease. It is without teachers, the very foundation of education, eradicated, leaving generations without the tools of learning. It is without artists, the creative spirit silenced, the vibrant culture muted, the very fabric of society, the collective memory of skills and knowledge has been brutally torn apart. Survivors, their bodies scarred, their spirits deeply wounded, continue to search. They search for missing loved ones, for fragments of information, for any whisper of what happened to those who simply vanished. The quiet hope in their eyes, mingled with an almost unbearable pain, is a testament to the enduring human need for connection, for closure. But for many, the search remains endless, the answers forever elusive. The memories of Angkor, the unseen, all-powerful organization, still shake them awake at night. You imagine the vivid nightmares, the flashes of hunger, the chilling silence, the faces of lost family members, the constant fear that even in sleep, the invisible hand of the regime might reach out and claim them. This profound historical event, however, is not confined to Cambodia's past. It resonates as a chilling warning, a universal truth etched in the annals of human history. It is a stark illustration of what happens when humanity, in its quest for an idealized future, hands over its soul to an ideology that turns monstrous. It shows how easily the individual can be annihilated, how love can be outlawed, how hunger can become a political weapon, and how silence can be both a means of survival and a pathway to oblivion. You feel the weight of this history, the quiet, persistent echo of the suffering, and the profound realization that the seeds of such darkness can exist anywhere, in any time. If vigilance is abandoned, if empathy is silenced, and if the human spirit allows itself to be bent and broken by an absolute and unforgiving idea. And so, the story continues, not in loud proclamations, but in the quiet, lingering whispers of memory, a history that refuses to be silenced. This is Cambodia, a country of impenetrable jungles and fabulous ruins, lost in time where kings became gods and monks still seek heavenly peace. And now this mysterious land has begun to open up, to reveal the dark beauty that has lured adventurers here for centuries. My journey will take me deep into its exotic heart, where landmines still kill and the soldiers of the Khmer Rouge still patrol the remote jungles, as I try to discover, have such a peaceful country could become the killing fields foreign. My name is David Adams, and this is the deep jungle of the Cardamom Mountains in southern Cambodia, now for more than 30 years. This wilderness has been cut off from the outside world, and for much of that time, it's been a Khmer Rouge stronghold. Primeval rainforest is one of Southeast Asia's last wilderness areas, which until recently you entered at your own risk. These impenetrable forests were once a refuge for guerrilla fighters, but they were also a refuge for an incredible array of unique wildlife. My journey starts on the Thai border from there. I head across Tonle Sap, Cambodia's Great Lake, then north into the wilderness, before heading down the mighty Mekong to the capital Phnom Penh, and then finally onto the jungles of the Cardamoms for 30 years. Cambodia's history has been one of suffering, as it was bombed, blasted and brutalized by war. France, the United States, and Vietnam, all playing their part, but its greatest misery came from within. In 1975, Cambodia came under the control of a radical communist government, the Khmer Rouge. But today, there's another side to the Khmer Rouge. I'm with a band of former jungle soldiers who are setting up an ambush, but the quarry is no longer human. This time, their weapons are cameras, and their targets rare and endangered wildlife. In a way, both soldiers and animals became allies. While the Khmer Rouge hunted the wildlife, they also kept everyone else out of the jungles, which preserved the habitat of a huge number of endangered species. Polluted town on the Thai-Cambodia border is called Poipet only a few months ago. It harbored one of the most notorious rare animal markets in Asia to enter this illicit world. I need people who have access experience guides who know their way around the jungles and the former domain of the Khmer Rouge Sun Hin. And Hunter Weiler were just the guys in their work for the Cambodian Wildlife Protection Office. Both travel deep into Cambodia's wildest regions now. If they had their wife, a shop like this would be closed down. One way of saving endangered animals is to stop the illicit trade in rare animal parts. Well, when's this? This is the indoor trainer subspecies of the tiger. It was quite small, yeah, somewhat smaller than the Bengal tiger. And what are these? These are clouded leopard, also an endangered species. They spend a lot of time up on the trees, hunting birds. There are also parts of animals, bantang and rhinoceros horns, crocodile skulls and tiger penises, skins, bladders, and beaks, all valued as ingredients in Eastern traditional medicines. Then there are the trophy horns and antlers. These two may be ground up for use in making love potions. These are Capri's prayer, is the national animal of Cambodia. It's maybe totally extinct from the face of the earth. And it's here for the first time that I see the horns of a rare, perhaps even mythical creature, the Keating Vor. It's said to be a shy animal that eats snakes, and its horn is supposed to be an antidote for snake bite. It's also sometimes known as the Cambodian unicorn. Despite having two horns, has he ever seen one of these? Neither a live animals. Mythology tells us that the unicorn came from the east, like the Keating Vor. Its horn was supposed to be a cure for poison and was such a demand for traditional medicine. It's no surprise to learn that counterfeiters have moved in. Are these real ones? Oh, about 90 of people say. It's getting war. What do you think, Hannah? Well, I don't know. I'm skeptical about this, one of all the Keating Vor horns that scientists have examined. Most of them try to be fakes. There is a very large counterfeit market because of the scarcity of the animal and its high monetary value. So what price would he sell these for? The most expensive phone, that he said, is like $200 for horn, 200 for this. Yes, for a subsistence farmer, that's more than a year's wages. I can't help wondering if there's a mythical scam happening here. I have a friend here, and he is trying to draw a pig walk in an effort to convince me son here takes me to meet an artist friend who can give me some idea of what this Cambodian unicorn looks like on the wall. I see a poster of rare and endangered animals amongst them. A Keating Vor. Let's just call it a two-horned unicorn so we know where we are. This is one of his references. The other is a set of horns. But knowing how many fake horns there are, maybe he also needs a little imagination. Gradually, an animal takes shape in a setting that looks like a Garden of Eden. With one difference, the snake gets eaten by the two-horned unicorn. So do you think it exists in the jungle somewhere? Absolutely, yeah. Both Sun He and Hunter are driven by a passion to protect endangered animals. For me, the chance of photographing a mythical creature, however remote, is reason enough to join their expedition. I mean, it's almost a legend about this. The unicorn is a mythical beast with a very strange and distinct horn that lives in the heart mines of some ancient peoples. Is maybe like Cambodia's unicorn, only in this case. This unicorn may actually exist, I think so. But they've never brought any body or skins or anything like that, so it's very hard to believe, yeah, because the animal. Like one thing we do know, though, our next stop was once the greatest city on the planet. an earthly paradise that they lost in the jungle for 500 years. Foreign is a strange mixture of Southeast Asian and European culture. The icons of the ancient Khmer Empire rubbing shoulders with French. Colonial architecture was once part of French Indochina, but long before the French occupation, Cambodia was at the center of a great empire that once boasted the greatest city on earth were in the town of Battambang. To pick up a boat to take us to the ruined city of Angkor, how much of Cambodia is traversed by rivers and canals. A boat is often the most efficient form of transport here. You see another side to Cambodia. Mile after mile of river communities all along the banks are houseboats and floating villages. Mostly subsistence fishermen, proximity to Tonle Sap and its ready supply of fish were major reasons for the successful expansion of Angkor. Though today, overfishing is threatening this great resource, and it's not for the first time when these amazing ruins were first rescued from the jungle. The world marveled at the lost capital of an ancient empire from here between the 9th and the 13th centuries. The Khmer emperors ruled virtually all of Southeast Asia. This is what the tourists see: the great Angkor Wat Temple. What's not so well known is that Angkor city sprawled over 1,000 square kilometers, or 600 square miles. In its day, it was the largest city on Earth. It's actually like a great low-density industrial city, sort of Los Angeles. What sort of population are we talking about? The general estimates are somewhere on the order of 1 million. Within this 1,000 square K meet Professor Roland Fletcher, an Australian archaeologist who has spent years studying large cities of the ancient world. And how does that compare to, say, Paris or London? At the same time, Paris or London at that period were a couple 100,000 or less. So they're very small places, very small indeed. So how far does it actually go beyond the tree line there? I know it extends to the hills on the northern horizon. Literally, the horizon all the way around, all the way around. It's absolutely amazing over there. I'm just getting used to this ancient sprawl when Professor Fletcher produces a radar map taken from the space shuttle radar, penetrates the jungle, revealing a vast network of ruined roads, suburbs, and canals. The colors turning hidden ruins into a skeletal record of civilization. That's the West Baray, which is 8 kilometers. That's the big reservoir out here. It's the one over there, right? And the bit I'm really interested in is this huge road that runs up for 25 kilometers up to the Killeen Hills, which is up to that high point on the hill. And the point of all this, well, something went wrong, even though it was the capital of a mighty empire situated in a green and fertile land. It died. Professor Fletcher thinks he knows why. Well, the reason I'm interested in it is because it's the largest pre-industrial low-density city. And there are a lot of problems about why those low-density cities die. Because this is the biggest example. This is the key test. And at the moment, our suspicion is that it's an ecological problem. It's to do with excessive land clearance under Alt-Sem. These trees, and in fact off beyond the horizon there are, and Korean period fields, under the forests, so this whole area would have actually been just paddy-filled plains with trees where the houses are along the streets. Like you see in modern villages, part of this history here may be being rerun. And that's what we want to assess. They filled the trees, overfished the lake, and eventually ran out of food, population, and purpose. Professor Fletcher believes this architectural time capsule sends out a warning to the world. It was the Los Angeles, the Mexico City, or the London of its day, and it died. Yet ecologically, the same mistakes he believes brought about its demise are being repeated again right now. The question is, if it happened once, could it happen again? But far more recently, Cambodia experienced an even greater cataclysm. We're about to enter the last bastion of the Khmer Rouge and the final resting place of one of the world's bloodiest killers. In 1928, a boy was born to a peasant family. In Cambodia for 6 years, he lived and studied peacefully in a Buddhist monastery, 2 of them as a monk. Later he went to study in Paris. His name was Solat Sa, but he was better known to the world as Pol Pot, and he became a killer. How such a peaceful country could end up with such a brutal killer as its leader has always been a source of amazement to me. We're in the far north of Cambodia, heading for the tiny township of Anong Vang on our way to the Mekong River. Few people on earth have unleashed such chaos. As Pol Pot in 1975, he sent the Khmer Rouge into Phnom Penh to empty it. It was part of an experiment to set up an ideal peasant state. They marched the population into the fields to work and cut Cambodia off from the world. They began again with year zero. Temples, money, and property were abolished, and the purge that followed gave us the phrase, the killing fields estimated 5 million people died in Pol Pot's extermination camps. As we get closer, I feel a sense of apprehension already. There are signs of war. A lot of people died on this road. Basically, everyone who lives here is an Khmer Rouge, a soldier or a member of their families. And this area was the last stronghold of the Khmer Rouge movement. This is where Pol Pot had his headquarters, and this was the last mayor's bastion to fall in old Cambodia. We going to get through okay, or is it difficulties with the government troops? Oh, I've seen that. Is okay, we just talked with the soldier here at a checkpoint. We offer a small gift. It's not a bribe, it's a courtesy, and it can mean a lot to a man who only earns $20 a month. Checkpoints into what was and probably still is the heartland of the Khmer Rouge, and up here on this mountain is where Pol Pot died. Now, whether he was murdered or whether he died of old age is still open to conjecture. But his body, or the remains of it, are still up. Here, and very few people still have been allowed in here, and even though it's now part of government territory, it's still very much Khmer Rouge. The echoes of war are everywhere, derelict, and rusting tanks are reminders of the Khmer Rouge's last stand, Horan. It's the entrance to Pol Pot's headquarters, more soldiers to negotiate with, and again, there are signs of fighting. These statues are revolutionaries, and they've all had their heads blown off. We approach the soldiers cautiously, even though they wear the insignia of the modern Cambodian army. These men were Khmer Rouge guards in Pol Pot's day. Did he like Pol Pot? Did he think he was in Europe? Yeah, why did so many people like him, John? The first they forced him to like him. Yeah, so most people didn't want to like him, yeah. It's all a little unclear what he believed or believes. The days of the Khmer Rouge are not long gone. Just in case there's trouble ahead, Sun Hien arranges for one of the soldiers to come with us to ease our passage. The road gets worse, so after the deaths of 5 million people, how could someone still like Pol Pot? I think a lot of people actually liked Pol Pot because he was such a fierce, that what I heard, yeah, that's what I heard from other people individually. You know, they still, respect or both, despite him killing all those people. And they're even some of their own relatives. They still respect him. That's incredible. There's a sense of dread as we arrive at Privy here. Pol Pot's last headquarters, this was where he died. Hello, the greeting, though, is friendly, is a real government soldier. Not a former Khmer Rouge. Border sensitivities have changed, and today, it's the government in charge. I understand that. Pol Pot, his last days were spent here, and that he died here, and his body was burnt. Is that correct? He's not here, and his body was born in that place. Could he show us? Yeah, there's not much left of it, is it? At first, it all looks a bit mundane, a scattering of Pol Pot's possessions, even the remains of his toilet, and then we're shown his grave. That is the place that people and Pol proud body after he died. So nothing's been removed, it's just the ashes of Phil Pot here. They piled up his possessions, put his body on the funeral pyre, and burnt the lot. Hardly a state funeral. It's kind of an ignominious ending for one of the great butchers of history. Between 1 and 2 million people controlled all of Cambodia at one time. This is Pol Pot's monument for posterity. Not too impressive, probably fitting, yeah, very much millions of deaths, endless suffering, and all that's left is a dirty mound and a broken toilet in a jungle clearing. Even so, the soldiers still speak in hushed tones at his gravesite, the memory of Pol Pot and the killing fields still has a profound effect on the Cambodian people as they pick over what remains of his funeral pyre. I notice incense sticks, Buddhist offerings on the grave of a communist who despised religion. A day's drive from Pol Pot's grave is the reason Hunter Weiler and son here have come to this remote part of the jungle. They're meeting up with some former Khmer Rouge soldiers who've become professional wildlife trackers, and they're on the trail of the Keating War. Cambodia's semi-legendary two-horned unicorn. These guys are some of the most skillful wildlife hunters in Cambodia today. They're working for the Wildlife Conservation Society, an organization that's changing the way locals view the jungle and the animals in it. We've recruited the best of the former hunters and turned them into wildlife rangers. And the people we've recruited, I would say probably 80% of the tigers are killed by 25 of the hunters. There's a sort of elite that specializes in large mammals, and these are the people we've gone after. So we've taken out of circulation in this province 10 of the very best hunters, and each of those hunters is capable of killing several tiger a year. So that's a dramatic impact to take that many experienced hunters out of circulation and get them on side of conservation, yeah. So here the stories come together. Khmer Rouge, an endangered wildlife, and together the possibility of a bright future for this beleaguered land. So have they had much luck recently for their efforts? The cameras are beginning to reveal what lies beneath the canopy, and from this province we have tiger gaur and banting, 2 endangered wild cattle, standbarder, barking deer, and giant ibis bird, and any sign of Kitty Hall. Not yet, we're hoping, yeah. As we walk back, we stick strictly to the park, thanks to the Khmer Rouge. Cambodia is one of the most heavily landmined countries on Earth. 6 million of them are still scattered across the country. One full step, and you can lose your leg, or worse, every day. Somewhere in Cambodia, a landmine explodes under someone. Every single person who lives in this village has either stood on a mine or is related to a victim. They're all here because of this remarkable man. But Gibbons, he's a Vietnam vet who decided to return to Indochina to try and help those maimed by landmines. Applause foreign, he couldn't do much about the landmines, but he could try and help the victims put their lives back together afterwards. So he started a factory to make low-cost artificial limbs. It's time to pay back, you know. It's time to pay back for what I did and what we were part of in the past, and also to share some of the incredible wealth and the incredible knowledge that we as Americans have. Everyone working here is missing a limb or has been severely maimed, but soon realized that providing the limbs wasn't enough in Cambodia. Such victims are usually shunned as unemployable, unmarriageable, and generally a burden on society. If his scheme was to work, he had to do more. Learning how to use the limb is no problem. 1-2 weeks. We do give them training, how to walk, how to balance, that kind of thing. Then they go back to their village. That is where I think the problem is, because they can't find a way to support themselves. Financially or economically, they are now supporting themselves mechanically with this limb, but they have no job, so they need to have some way to get money. Applause so, but in his landmine victim started a silk industry, and it's good silk commanding high prices, and it's all made by the maimed and the limbless. They grow their own mulberries to feed to their own silkworms, then they spin it, dye it, weave it, and market it to the world. On the internet, what it's done is give them back their self-respect. With the money they earned, they bought land, and they've built homes. Many have married, and now educate their children in the school they built themselves, and now they even pass on their skills to those that have limbs. And much of it is due to the drive and enterprise of a former GI in such an impoverished society. It's amazing what hope and support can achieve, especially when they've been dealt such a cruel blow. By war, I leave the village feeling both uplifted and humbled. But we must move on. The Mekong River is home to pirates. Since the end of the war, attacks on boats have increased steadily tomorrow. Run the gauntlet of these modern-day buccaneers, on one of the most dangerous sections of the river. What's my dinner? The Mekong is 700 miles long. That's 300 kilometers, which makes it one of the longest rivers in the world from here. It's a 200-mile journey to Phnom Penh, a journey the government advises all Westerners against because of banditry and piracy. Applause. Wildlife protection officers, Hunter and Sunhan, have made the journey many times. Though the jungles that line the banks are a rich source of wildlife for the poachers that they're trying to wipe out. At first, the river appears as a vast drifting lake, but it's not as serene as it seems. This river is a navigator's nightmare crew place, a bowl of fruit on the bow, an offering to the river spirits to ensure that the passage goes well for these rapids all down the Mekong. Another, they have a thorough of dam, know on the way from and trying to catch it. I think that is one of the phenol, smaller one, not the biggest one soon. The waters start to ripple, then simmer, and whirlpools rips and currents erupt right about now. I'm glad that these are the small rapid stone buoys put in place by the French a century ago marked the course. The helmsman must have played just the right amount of power on the rudder, or the boat will be ripped apart by the rocks below for a moment. Even the captain casts a concerned eye. But just for a moment, he has total faith in his helmsman, his son, and I guess so should I. Rapids and shallows make travel on the Mekong dangerous after dark, not forgetting pirates, so we look for somewhere to rest up for the night. Sailing on this river is very much a family affair. Living aboard is the captain's wife, his mother-in-law, his sons, their wives, and a new member of the crew, his grandson. No doubt he too will one day captain on the Mekong. Laughter. This is delicious sort of a peanut. Meat and garlic, and this is like a sweet rice. They just bundled up together with, banana leaves. Keeps it lovely and fresh. It's really good, isn't it? Need like a king on the Mekong. Mekong River water isn't quite the purest on earth. But after a hot day, it's got to be the most refreshing. And as the sound of singing reaches out to us across these waters again, I wonder how such a peaceful country could have suffered so much foreign as day breaks. Fishermen are returning from a night's work, and the river glows rich and golden as we slip our moorings and prepare to continue our voyage. And for me, no chance of us sleep in the revving engine soon sees to that. Well, I wouldn't say that's the best night's sleep I've ever had. A lot of muzzies and really sticky. But now, it's beautifully cool. I have to say, it's an incredibly peaceful place, and the meat kind you expect is incredibly crowded. Rivers seething with humanity. But there's nothing. It's just jungle and really beautiful, however this wilderness has remained. Not because of a desire for preservation, it's remained simply because civil unrest meant that no one could safely live here, and no man's land of opportunity for pirates, abandons, and renegade units of the Khmer Rouge, he said when they stopped the boat. They shot the gun, and then when they get in, they get all the people up to the jungle, and then those people come into the boat, and they check and see everyone. Everything they want, they took away. He tells me that a few shots over the bow from the jungle would announce the attackers. It happened so often that once he had to cover his boat with armor plating. Our conversation ends as we approach river shallows. They check the depths, but again, no one's really that concerned. They've all been this way many times before. But then the wilderness disappears, and on the banks, another brand of piracy, illegal loggers filling the great forests in a desperate attempt to earn dollars in a cash-strapped country and spending them. Inheritance is what happens when order breaks down and a country is pulled apart by war greed and opportunism. And when war came to Phnom Penh, it wasn't just a city devastated by bombs. It was an empty city, cleared by the Khmer Rouge, who'd forced everyone out at gunpoint foreign, that I find a vibrant, busy city. And it's here that I meet, cheered one of Cambodia's leading journalists, and I couldn't have hoped for a better guide. Let me think about Phnom Penh. Is that it's a really small town. It's quite a bit of traffic. You can get around easily by motorbike, there's cafes everywhere, and then there's wonderful architecture left by the French. It's a really lovely city, so is that the palace? Yes. It is. Even this most Cambodian of structures was built by the French, so what happened next? Well, Hunter is a relatively recent arrival in newly peaceful Phnom Penh over lunch at his house. I learn about cheats, Khmer Rouge pass. I'm married during a Commodore time and got married, yeah. But you're not with your wife anymore. Yeah, but I couldn't say no. If I say no, I would be beheaded or disappeared, yeah, but you're a survivor. I'm like a cat, and people did disappear, millions of them, to bring me face to face with the demons of Cambodia's past. Tia takes me to Tall Sling, now known as the Museum of Genocide. Tall Slang was once a high school, but the Khmer Rouge turned it into a torture chamber here. They interrogated anyone who they considered to be an enemy of the state, which seemed to be just about everyone. How many people were killed here? How many people died? More than 20,000 people. 20,000 die in this prison. And they just brought them in and tortured them, and then send them to Ching and killed him, which were the killing fields, yeah. 1 million people got killed over there. The quiet is unsettling as we step further into this dreadful place. Morbid fascination is overtaken by horror. This wasn't just a place where people died. It was a place where they died horribly. But a horrible place? Yeah. Was it a map of Cambodia? It's a map of Cambodia. Pretty macabre, isn't it? Yes, it is. They were intellectual. In Scrabble, they made a map. My God, the tragedy can be seen in their faces. Victims and victors side by side. Those of the Khmer Rouge defiant and arrogant. Those of the victims simply defeated. It's impossible not to be moved by the unspeakable suffering and brutality that took place here, foreign as we walk. I wonder how any ideology or hatred could ever justify such evil. For cheered, it must be particularly confronting. You know, I feel sad and remind in the past day when I see this picture. Yeah, it's just unbelievable, yeah? So remind me, the day in the past about the Camaro, will I starving fearing. What do you think about that? I've just never seen anything like it. The Holocaust in Germany must be similar, yeah. I haven't seen that. So I've never seen anything like it, and you managed to live through this. Yeah, try to live in this, through this region. I think you're lucky to be alive, okay? In spite of all they've been through. Or perhaps because of it. Whenever Cambodians get a chance, they party. Like there's no tomorrow, and karaoke is the urban entertainment of choice. When they sing, they do so without a shred of embarrassment, which is sometimes a good thing, sometimes not. Particularly when it's my turn. Oh, it's hard to believe that not long ago, the entire population of Phnom Penh was forcibly relocated, leaving the city empty tomorrow. I too must leave the city as I head into the last of Southeast Asia's great wilderness areas, the Cardamom Mountains. Southeast Asia's monsoons were heavy this year. In Cambodia's Cardamom Mountains, and few of the roads survived. So we resort to a hangover from the communist days. A Russian-built 6-wheel drive, and it's like riding an angry elephant washed out. Every year the worst round I've ever been on. I think my traveling companions from the Wildlife Protection Office, Hunter Weiler and Sunhain, have invited local journalist Cheat to join us so he can witness firsthand what's happening in the Cardamoms. Once more, we're heading into the Khmer Rouge's former territory. It wasn't far from here. The Cheat was stationed when he was a Khmer Rouge soldier. Nearly everyone who lives here was once in the Khmer Rouge. This was where their rule lasted longest. It is the remotest and wildest corner of Southeast Asia, thank you. The Cardamom Mountains are on Cambodia's southern coast, and they're one of Southeast Asia's last wilderness areas. Our destination is the remote village of Osam. The Cardamoms are covered with thick tropical rainforest, which is full of wildlife. This is what Cambodia would have looked like before land clearance and mass exploitation of forests foreignally. If the country had remained under the Khmer Rouge, the loggers would have been kept at bay. Is this illegal? People cutting tree down very fast, and they are moving into the jungle and blowing up the Elephant and tigers, I'm afraid it will be all the tree and animal will be gone in the next 3 year or 2 year. If the government 3 years, yeah. If the government do not have any action to stop this kind of activity. And it's not just loggers in the last couple of years. Some 5,000 refugees have moved in. They want land, so they slash and burn the jungle, the village of Osan. If the Khmer Rouge had had their way, all of Cambodia would have been like Osan to them. It was the ideal community. There was no money, no organized religion. It was free of intellectuals and decadence to the Khmer Rouge. This was a peasant communist utopia. The Osam village elders are animists. They worship the spirits of the forest. The Khmer Rouge tolerated these beliefs as they pose no threat, but their isolation and their simple, uncomplicated lifestyle is coming to an end. Cardamoms are about to be caught in a pincer movement on one side. The forces of exploitation as the loggers genude the forests on the other side. The forces of ignorance as the refugees slash and burn for Hunter and Sunhan. It's a race against time. They must find out what animals live in these jungles. Otherwise, they can't mount an argument for their preservation for them. The camera traps are the key, providing hard evidence that this wilderness should be preserved. Thankfully, they're already finding a treasure trove of rare animals our cameras snap. Southeast Asian wild cattle, Cambodia clouded leopards, and a rare Indochina tiger. But alas, no two-horned unicorn. The elusive Keating Vor, though, if it exists anywhere, it'll be here in the Cardamom Mountains. Even skilled hunters who spend years in the forest only encounter one of these animals. Maybe once every 5, 7, 10 years. It's usually once or twice in a lifetime encounter, from what we've been able to learn. Tucson himself has never seen one, and he's spent over 15 years in the forest, 12 years as the Khmer Rouge gorilla. As a hunter for the gorilla supplying meat, this is one of the most skilled hunters from Cambodia, and he in the Cardamoms 12 years in the forest. He's never seen a kid anymore. So I guess if the Keating War is here or not, it's academic, because this forest actually might obey here in 5 years' time. That's why we're all working so hard to establish a new protected forest in Syria, exempt from logging to preserve the species we know about, and probably other unknown species. Maybe not as big and glamorous as a King's War, but surveys from the last year have turned up new species of snakes, butterflies, moths. This is a biodiversity treasure house, and we do need to inventory it thoroughly when you need to preserve what we have. Foreign, I find a monk giving blessings for all who enter, and I can't help but leave a prayer of hope on the ancient altar. It's too late to stop the killing fields, and probably it's too late to save the snake-eating two-horned unicorn. But it's not too late to stop the destruction in the Cardamom Mountains, and it's not too late to prevent Cambodia's other endangered wildlife. Following the Keating War foreign, it's also not too late to consider the lessons of ancient Angkor, though next time there may not be any trees left to take their revenge here at the ends of the earth.